Welcome to the final part of the Legend of Zelda timeline, Part 5, Breath of the Wild. Now that we've spent 4 videos understanding all 3 of the Zelda timelines, we're going to try and figure out where next year's Breath of the Wild fits. Nintendo's been fairly quiet about this, leaving fans scrambling for clues. I'm going to share with you my own thoughts and opinions. We're going to explore 3 questions. Which timeline does it take place in? Where does it take place in that timeline? And who is this Link? Let's start by going over what we know for sure. We know that Link wakes up at the beginning of the game after a deep sleep in a world he doesn't recognize. The Kingdom of Hyrule is in a state of complete ruin, all of its major landmarks and buildings are falling apart and rotting away. And 100 years before, Ganon laid waste to Hyrule and he was too powerful to destroy. So he was sealed inside Hyrule Castle. Inside the castle, Ganon's been building his power, and Link has to find a way to destroy him before he can break free. Question number 1. Which of the 3 timelines does this take place in? The first game in the Legend of Zelda's history is Skyward Sword. At the end of that game, the Kingdom of Hyrule was established, and Ganon didn't appear as a villain until the Ocarina of Time. So Breath of the Wild has to take place sometime after that, since it appears that Ganon is the main threat once again. But after Ocarina of Time, the timeline splits 3 ways. One timeline known as the Adult Era, in which Link travels back to the past, leaving the future behind. One timeline known as the Child Era, in which Link goes back to his childhood. And another alternate timeline known as the Downfall Era, in which he fails to stop Ganon in the Ocarina of Time. And to figure out in which timeline Breath of the Wild takes place, the most important aspect to look at is the state of the kingdom. It's completely annihilated after Ganon attacked it, and it still hasn't recovered even after 100 years. The Child Era, in which Link traveled back to the past and prevented Ganon from taking over, hasn't really mentioned anything like this happening. So, assuming this doesn't take place sometime in the future of that timeline, we can safely count this timeline out, leaving us with 2. Now let's take a look at the Adult Era, which saw Link disappear after going back to the past. It's possible that it can take place here since it was mentioned that Ganon did return and attacked Hyrule during the intro of the Wind Waker. But we already know what happened when he returned. The gods flooded the world and sealed him underwater. There are some theories claiming this may be Hyrule after the Great Sea dried up, and there is some possible evidence for this. Breath of the Wild includes the race known as the Koroks, which were only seen in the Wind Waker. Since the world was flooded and the people of Hyrule were spread around different islands, the Kokiri forest children from Ocarina of Time slowly evolved into the Koroks. But let me argue real quick why this doesn't conclusively prove that it takes place in this timeline. Couldn't it be possible the races of Hyrule may just naturally change over time? To demonstrate this, let's take a look at the Zora race in Ocarina of Time. If we go through the Downfall timeline, more specifically in A Link to the Past, this is what the Zora look like, clearly having a completely different appearance than they do in Ocarina, although there was no specific reason for their biology to change in this timeline. So wouldn't it be possible that the Kokiri children also became Koroks in a different timeline? Another piece of evidence pointing to the adult timeline is an item seen in Breath of the Wild called rock salt. When Link picks it up, the game says that rock salt is crystallized salt from the ancient sea, and it's been argued that this proves that the Great Sea from the Wind Waker once covered this version of Hyrule. But I argue that the rock salt could be referring to any ancient sea. In fact, if we go back to Skyward Sword, the desert area known as the Lanayru Sand Sea used to be covered by an ocean that dried up. Isn't it possible the rock salt was from this sea, which is part of the history of all 3 timelines? In the adult timeline, New Hyrule was also established in a different land, far away from the Great Sea, and the kingdom was rebuilt after the events of Phantom Hourglass. So there would be no reason to return to the Old Kingdom, and the Hyrule in Breath of the Wild is clearly the original land of Hyrule. The ties to Ocarina of Time are unmistakable for 2 reasons. In Breath of the Wild, you see the ruins of the Temple of Time, and it looks extremely similar to a run-down, decaying version of the Temple of Time from Ocarina of Time. You also see Death Mountain right here, a major landmark of Hyrule, also seen in Ocarina of Time. And Breath of the Wild heavily includes symbols of the Sheikah tribe, the ancient tribe that serves the royal family. This tribe has only ever been shown to be a part of the Downfall timeline, and it usually involves the character of Impa being a personal caretaker of Princess Zelda. All of these hints lead me to believe that Breath of the Wild solidly takes place sometime in the Downfall timeline, in which Link was defeated by Ganon in Ocarina of Time. Question number 2. Where in the Downfall timeline does it take place? To find out, it's important that we find a time in which Ganon was sealed away, yet Hyrule wasn't the peaceful, glorious kingdom that it once was. Breath of the Wild shows a Hyrule mostly empty of citizens and monsters roam the land, although Ganon was defeated. This evidence strongly implies the Hyrule we see is devastated from the events of the Imprisoning War. This war was mentioned in the introduction of A Link to the Past. Link was defeated by Ganon in Ocarina of Time, and Zelda gathered the power of the sages to seal a fully powered Ganon away. Eventually, stories of the Triforce's power spread, and people entered the Dark Realm where Ganon was sealed in search of it. These people became demons, and after gathering an army, Ganon escaped the Dark Realm and attacked Hyrule. With no Link to defend it, and with a huge army at his disposal, Ganon destroyed much of Hyrule and wiped out most of the knights, protecting the kingdom almost to the last man. This fits perfectly with the state in which Hyrule is in. The buildings are crumbling, nature's taking over, and Ganon sealed away. We also see structures missing any imagery of the Triforce. It's logical to think that after the events of the Imprisoning War, the remaining citizens of Hyrule blamed the Triforce for the kingdom's troubles, doing away with any reminders of its existence. The events of Breath of the Wild might see Link defeating Ganon, removing him from the castle, and sealing him away in the Dark Realm where he was originally put away. This would see peace return to Hyrule, and the people's faith in the Triforce restored, and perhaps the reconstruction of the kingdom. I believe all this evidence places Breath of the Wild between the events of the Imprisoning War and A Link to the Past, chronologically making it the first game in the Downfall timeline. Now, the third and final question. Who is Link in Breath of the Wild? Let's start by looking at the couple of things we know about Link. In every game, he's either a new version of the character completely, or he's a version of the character that we've played as before. So is this Link brand new, or have we been in his shoes before? I'm going to pose a crazy theory that may make some sense. Link in Breath of the Wild is the hero of time. The same Link that we played as in Ocarina of Time that failed to stop Ganon in this timeline. Why do I think that? The strongest evidence to this is right at the beginning of Breath of the Wild. We see Link waking up after 100 years of slumber in a chamber called the Shrine of Resurrection. Now the key word here is resurrection. The word implies something coming back to life. And to come back to life, someone would have to have died first. And which is the only version of Link that has failed? Ocarina of Time Link in the Downfall timeline. Link is the hero destined to destroy evil. He can't fail. So what a perfect way to give the hero of time a chance to redeem himself and wipe away his previous failure. There is one thing that may possibly go against this theory. Link looks very different from his Ocarina of Time days, implying that this may not be the same Link. But I do have an argument that shows this might not have much meaning. This may simply be an art decision by Nintendo to match the feel of the game. Let's look at another example where this was exactly the case. Here's Link from A Link Between Worlds, and here's Link from Triforce Heroes. Looks like two completely different people, right? Well, it's been confirmed that this is in fact the same Link, but the art style of the two games just happen to be a little different. This may be the case for Breath of the Wild versus Ocarina of Time. The different appearance may also be a way for Nintendo to avoid players from guessing the plot. They have said that they expect players to uncover the history of Breath of the Wild by uncovering the clues within the game. And with that, we've potentially answered all three questions posed by this video. Let me know down below if you agree with my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear other opinions on the matter. This video might be proven completely wrong once the game actually gets released, or it might be 100% accurate, and I'll definitely make an update video if needed. But I hope all of you enjoyed watching my complete presentation of the Legend of Zelda timeline. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a like down below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for more awesome videos. This is Fabian from GamerThumbTV. I love you guys and I hope you have an excellent day. Till next time.